Cloud Division, and today I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you to Atlanta here for TechEd 2011 and to kick off the virtualization track. This is my 9th TechEd, and so I'm very excited to be here today. We've got a lot of great content and sessions for you throughout the track. As you probably saw this morning, we've had a tremendous turnout. There's nearly 10,000 of us in attendance. That includes about 800 of folks out there with blue shirts like myself. And so that's almost a 1 to 10 ratio. So this is a tremendous opportunity for all of you to learn what our strategy is, learn what our products are capable of, what's coming down the road, to connect with one another. There's 10,000 of you here, making sure that you're sharing information with one another and best practices, and connect with us. This is a fantastic opportunity for us. This is why I love this event. Very few opportunities do we have to actually connect with so many of our customers all at once. We couldn't be here without you. You brought us along this path. And you need to help us chart the course for the future. As I mentioned, it's been about a decade since I joined Microsoft in the server group. And at that point, we were going through a transformation in the data center computing toward x86. We had just launched Windows 2000, and I was up here in a different role, talking about Active Directory and some brand new things we could do around directory services. At this point, Active Directory has almost 90% penetration in our enterprise customers, and so it's fantastic to see how you have come along with us and taught us along the way how we can make the product better. And we're in the middle of a different transformation. So as we lived through the transformation from mainframes to x86, as I talked to customers, and you saw this morning, there are two trends that you just cannot miss. They're undeniable as I go talk to you and your peers in the market. One is the cloud, and then the consumerization of IT and the proliferation of devices that are making their way into organizations. And the questions that I get are, what is the cloud? How do I take advantage of it? Should I be afraid of it? And so today and throughout this week, we hope to talk to you about what our strategy is and how we can help you along your own journey to the cloud. What I think that you will hear hopefully over and over is that there is no one path to the cloud. And cloud computing presents tremendous opportunities. But every organization is different, and as each of you chart your own course to cloud computing to take advantage of the benefits there, whether it be running in your data center or in a public cloud data center, a public services data center, we want to be with you along the way to help you chart that course. And then the other, on the consumerization of IT, all of us are carrying more devices than ever before. And all of those devices are connecting one another and to online services. And so how can you maintain the security and compliance of the data within your organization as your users demand a different way of work? And so throughout this presentation, I'll just give you a taste of what you'll see through the virtualization track and through the other tracks here at TechEd. But what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about this course that we've been on in the transformation to a virtualized data center and to cloud computing. So over the last 15 or so years, we've seen a tremendous adoption of x86 servers. And this year, about 7.8 million x86 servers, physical servers, will ship into the market. And in that, especially in the last decade, what you battled was the siloing of servers, the running specific applications, and server sprawl. It became very easy to actually acquire and deploy a server, and so they popped up everywhere. Enter virtualization, 8, 9, 10 years ago, and the ability to consolidate those underutilized servers onto a single machine and increase the efficiency of your data center. And so we've been on this path for virtualization. This year, about 20% of all physical servers that will enter the market, so of that 7.8 million servers that I talked about 1 in 5 of those will run a virtualization layer of software on top of it. And so that probably to many of you sounds like a small number. Certainly when I talk to a lot of you out there, you're virtualizing 40, 50, 60, even 80% of your servers. There are a lot of servers out there, especially in the small and mid-market, smaller organizations that are yet to be virtualized. So each of you are on your own path toward taking advantage of virtualization. And so much of what we'll talk about today are the tools that we've provided and the tools we'll be providing you to help take advantage of the virtualization technologies to better deliver to your business units. And so on those 1.6 or 1.7 million servers that shipped this year that are virtualized, there were over 10 million VMs, 10 million instances of x86 operating systems running in those VMs. So already we've flipped over the inflection point where there are more VMs, more work being done in a virtual machine than on the physical server. And that will continue to increase. Next year, we will actually pop over on the install base. So in the install base, there's not quite 30 million servers that are x86. And of those 30 million servers, there's about 26 or 27 million instances that are running in a VM. And so next year, we'll cross the milestone where actually there'll be more VMs than physical servers in the install base. What this means for you is that if you thought that there was a problem before with physical server sprawl, when you think about the explosion in the number of VMs and instances across your organization, management becomes critical. And as management becomes more critical, what you'll find is that the application is really what matters. And so what's core to our strategy is the application and how to deliver that application as a service. And so on this path that we've been going on, we've been learning as a public cloud provider ourselves and learning from our partners that are hosters and service providers into what it takes to run a high-scale public service. And so as we think about that, we've learned, and we'll take those learnings and apply them to the tools and technologies that we bring to you so that you can deliver IT as a service. So you can deliver data center computing and the applications that your business units and your users need as a service so that you can focus on the application and less about the infrastructure. So I often get asked, what's the difference between a cloud and a highly virtualized environment? And so what I wanted to do is spend a couple of minutes talking about the distinctions and the attributes of cloud computing. Now, this is cloud computing whether it's running in your data center or in a public service. So starting from the bottom, one of the things that we've always noticed about cloud providers is that they offer pay by use. And so in an internal organization, this would be chargeback or showback, but it's a usage-based model. So there's business model implications as we think about cloud computing. It's also scalable and elastic. And what enables the ability to dynamically expand and contract based on demand is that you have to employ dramatic levels of automation. So the manual tasks that were once done to add or remove a server based on a holiday season coming up, you would do this through automation. And one of the things that makes service providers so efficient and the economics of service providers so unique is the fact that they share an infrastructure among all their customers. And so this is often referred to as multi-tenant. And so I often get asked in a private cloud environment, what does multi-tenancy look like? And what it really means is that all of us within our businesses have multiple business units. Within, you have HR, you have finance, and you have other departments, each of which often and historically have had their own servers or even their own data centers, certainly their own applications. And in a cloud computing paradigm, this infrastructure is shared. And so you think about it as a common fabric or a common infrastructure whereby all of those applications and services run. And when you aggregate demand across a number of servers for a number of business units or external customers, you're able to take the demand curve and aggregate it among the entire infrastructure. So the spikiness that you once had to deal with when one department had a spike and you had to add servers to it can go away. So aggregating demand on a shared infrastructure is a key attribute of cloud computing. And so public service providers are able to aggregate demand at a much higher level. They can think about time zone aggregation, even industry aggregation, than private cloud environments. But there might be control reasons or compliance or data security reasons that you would want to keep those applications and infrastructure on your premises and in your data center. And lastly, we talk about self-service. And so the ability for the end user or the customer or the application owner to go out and provision an application without actually requiring IT to do it for them. And so the role of the infrastructure management team is beginning to roll out an infrastructure and then providing self-service tools to allow application owners to then provision those applications themselves for their end users. And all of this results in a new level of agility. What once would take weeks or even months to provision a new application or a new set of servers can take hours or even minutes. The focus of an application owner to not worry about having to build their own parallel infrastructure. The infrastructure team can provide the infrastructure for them, and they can just worry about their application. And as I mentioned, the shared use of an infrastructure allows new economics, such that you don't have to over-provision for high peak demand for one specific application. You can aggregate demand across an entire infrastructure. So as we look at what we are doing in our own data centers and the hundreds of thousands of servers that we deploy in our data centers to offer public services that started with consumers like Hotmail and Search, now moving toward business consumers, we looked at all of these attributes and we've been learning through that process what it takes to build a cloud platform. And so what we have is the most comprehensive set of cloud services in the market, starting with Platform as a Service delivered by Windows Azure and SQL Azure to allow you to bring applications, develop applications, and run them in a Microsoft data center, as well as Software as a Service or actual applications, finished applications that we deliver, delivered by Office 365, so SharePoint, Exchange, and Lync delivered as a service to you, as well as CRM Online. And one of the latest additions is Windows Intune that allows you to manage and secure your desktops in a cloud service, with a cloud service. And so those are the offerings on the public side. We actually have over 200 online services. And so as we go, we're deploying many public cloud services. We also are focused on helping you in your own environments to deploy a private cloud. And the foundation of our private cloud to deliver infrastructure as a service is Windows Server, Hyper-V, and System Center. We'll often refer to this as Hyper-V Cloud. And so with Windows Server and Hyper-V, you're able to take the robust virtualization platform in Hyper-V and a unified management infrastructure with System Center to provision and delegate cloud access to your business units and let them deploy and manage applications from that. And one of the most important parts of Microsoft's approach to cloud computing are what we have in common between what's running in the private cloud and what's in the public cloud. I mentioned Active Directory before. Identity is absolutely critical in a hybrid cloud environment. We see that the public cloud adoption will be an evolution over time. Each of you are going to have to chart your own course on which applications that you manage are going to move to the cloud. And Active Directory has over 80% penetration for the directory store, and you're able to leverage those assets that you've invested in and all of the knowledge that you've spent years learning and how to deploy and manage Active Directory and leverage that going forward. Virtualization, Hyper-V continues to gain momentum. We'll talk about some customers that are deploying Hyper-V and the way that we're growing share and how all of you are using, many of you using Hyper-V today. It's a core element of you're able to run a Hyper-V virtual machine on the private cloud, and you can also run a Hyper-V virtual machine in the public cloud on Windows Azure. On the management front, System Center is a very important bridge between the private cloud and the public cloud. As you saw this morning in the keynote, you can actually use System Center to manage services that are running in Windows Azure in a public environment, as well as what you do today and run those applications in your private cloud as well. And on the development front, there's over 5 million .NET developers out there, and Visual Studio is the leading professional tools that developers use, and you can use .NET as well as Java and PHP to deploy on both the private cloud and the public cloud. From a differentiation standpoint, it's important to talk about the way that Microsoft is focused on the application-driven nature. We don't think about managing VMs. We think about focusing on the application. And so System Center, with its deep insight into applications and the ability to actually drill down into an application and what's going on, whether it be with Operations Manager or Config Manager, and the ability to isolate issues, it really showcases the importance that applications are what drive business value, not virtual machines. Cross-platform is an important element of our private cloud computing strategy. System Center manages multiple hypervisors, whether it be Hyper-V, VMware ESX, or Xen. On Hyper-V, you can run multiple guest operating systems, not just Windows. We run multiple flavors of Linux, and obviously multiple development frameworks, whether that's .NET, Java, PHP, etc. And one of the things we hear loud and clear from you is that there's no all or nothing in the cloud. It's an evolutionary path for each of you, and so it's important that we're able to help you with our tools and technologies to leverage the knowledge you have and the tools that you have already invested in to chart your own path to the public cloud. So whether you're going to deploy a private cloud in your own data center or leverage public cloud resources in a Microsoft data center or one of our many hosting partners that we have, you're able to leverage the tools with System Center and Visual Studio across that entire spectrum. And as you think about Hyper-V in your enterprise data center, it's important to know that we've been focusing on making sure that our own workloads are focused on and able to run best on Hyper-V. And so what you'll see today is us talking about Exchange and SharePoint and SQL Server running on Hyper-V. And Hyper-V is the fastest growing hypervisor in the market. We continue to gain share, and we're growing much faster than the other hypervisors in the market. I'm going to go ahead and shift gears now and talk about System Center 2012, which is one of our core strategies from a management standpoint for private cloud. System Center 2012 is available in beta right now. And System Center 2012 is focused on delivering that application insight with predictable application service levels and one of the things that System Center can do is actually drill down on specifically where in the code that there is an error happening, and you can share that information with the developer so that they can more quickly address that issue. System Center helps deliver the most productive infrastructure by being able to help you provision very quickly and easily Hyper-V-based private cloud infrastructure based on what you already know and already own. And so there's the System Center 2012 suite includes all of the elements of System Center that you do. So it's System Center Configuration Manager, System Center Operations Manager, Virtual Machine Manager, Service Manager, as well as some new technologies that we've been developing and have acquired over the last couple of years. And the last point on System Center 2012 is it's focused on your cloud. Your cloud can run in multiple locations. It can run in your data center or in a public cloud data center, and System Center can run across both of those. And so with that, I'm going to invite Peter Meister up to come demonstrate some of the capabilities of System Center 2012.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. Let me just switch over. So what you see here today is, we're going into a direction where IT cloud administrators are going to want to produce services so that their application owners can go ahead and deploy them. And what I'm going to show you today is the creation of an application service, how you go about creating that application service through the new System Center 2012 Virtual Machine Manager. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is a live demo. So you'll see that I'm actually connecting into Redmond back in Microsoft headquarters. And I'm remoting into an actual live environment of System Center 2012. Now this is a full private cloud implementation that we use up in our headquarters for testing and development. And what you have here today is you have me as the IT cloud administrator for all of Contoso Corporation. So look at me as the guy who's running the whole cloud for the company, right? But I want to be able to take a new service online because I received a request from an application owner that is managing the HR side of the business. In essence, all of the HR cloud assets and resources. So the way that you would perform that task is the HR application owner would submit through a portal a request for me to put on that service so they can deploy it. But because there's policies in place for cloud resources to be put into production, I have to, as the IT cloud executive sponsor, if you will, produce that service template and assign that template to the user. So I'm going to show you today how that gets accomplished. Now, if you're not familiar with System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012, that's what I'm running here on stage. And what you can see here is I have a ton of different clouds. Demo, HR production, sales, staging areas for my test and dev environments. I'm going to be dealing primarily with the HR production private cloud. Now, when I go into that cloud and I click inside of here, I'm able to start to procure a service template. Now, that's just a simple process of creating compute, network, and storage into a template, setting resource parameters that my HR user, that application end user, can then procure and deploy themselves. So what I do is I simply say, OK, I want to create a new service. I set it to create a new template. It takes me into a designer. And this is a new environment that allows us to visualize our cloud environment and allows us to create applications, services, but through a very intuitive fashion that's easy for people to really get. Now, what you'll see on the left-hand side are things that relegate from the days of virtualization, things like virtual machine templates, workload templates. Sometimes you'll see things like database templates. But you can also start to think about templates that acquire full sets of multi-tiered applications now. So what I'm going to create today is a simple template that's going to produce a 3-tiered HR web application, right? So it's a drag and drop opportunity for me. So I simply click on my resource. In this case, I'm going to take a SQL server into my designer. You see it creates the network connectivity. It's already pre-programmed to work with my internal virtual LAN switching, so it knows to pick my Enterprise Contoso Corporation network. So it's connected that SQL data store. Now I'm going to bring in my application tier, right, which is my application front end for the web service. And then I'm going to bring in my compute tier, which is the HR lockdown template for the hardware that we utilize for virtual machines for our HR applications. It has specific security, specific policies in place. But because this is a 3-tiered application, I have to make sure when I turn this thing on, or when the application owner deploys it, that I'm absolutely setting the priority start for these applications in their proper order. So as you can see in the bottom left-hand side, we have things like deployment order, the order of which the VM is put online. We have things like servicing order. We can also scale the applications. We can set minimum and maximum instance scopes so that this resource can scale and contract. In this case, I'm going to go ahead in the sales application and tell it to start as the second resource. For the HR server, I want to make sure I set that as the third resource. And then over here, I can set things like the machine instances that are assigned to this, how many minimum, how many maximum, so that that resource can grow and contract. And so I'm going to go ahead and set that to 5. I'm going to set the default instances to 3, the minimum instances required for the service, and then the upgrade domains. Now what I would do is save this template, right? And I would go ahead and assign permissions to this template for the HR user. Now that HR user will log in from a web front end. They're going to come in through Project Conchero, and they're going to access this template. That template is specifically assigned just to the HR IT admins, so there's no way any other person can deploy that service template into production. In essence, it is locked down for the HR users. When they come into the Conchero self-service portal, they're going to be able to access that new VMM service, choose how they want to deploy it and when, and then deploy it out themselves, taking away the burden from us as the IT Cloud Administration from having to handle the deployment aspects. We're putting that control back into the hands of the application owner. And that is System Center 2012 Virtual Machine Manager, Windows Server 2008 Hyper-V, and System Center's full suite of products. So what do you guys think? Thanks. Thanks, Mike.
So now that the cloud had been provisioned, the application owner can just add the application to it and go from there. And the cloud administrator doesn't have to worry about it other than just monitoring and adding resources as necessary. So empowering the application owner to manage their own application without actually having to build their own infrastructure. And so prior to this, what we obviously saw were application owners needing to build out their own infrastructures, and now on a shared infrastructure, the application owner can take advantage of System Center 2012, and that's all on a self-service portal. So that's great. And so all of that was done with System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012. Which is in beta now. So you can go out and download those bits today and give us feedback so that when we deliver the ultimate product, it's exactly what you need. I talked briefly a little bit about our cross-platform support before, and so I wanted to complete that conversation. What we hear loud and clear from you is that you don't just have Windows in your environment, and you don't just need to virtualize Windows. And so what we've done with Hyper-V is we support Windows Server, Red Hat, and SUSE Linux. Windows Server in the x86 market has about 76% share of all x86 servers on the planet. Red Hat and SUSE make up almost 80% of what's left. But we also heard from you that that wasn't enough. And so we're pleased today to announce that Hyper-V will support CentOS on top of the Hyper-V platform, and that's available today. And so we continue down the path of making sure that we can deliver the most important distributions to run on Hyper-V that you have in your environment. And this is an evolving list. What we need to do is hear from you to make sure that we've got the right operating system support within Hyper-V. System Center at the hypervisor level supports VMware ESX as well as Citrix Zen Server. And so we also hear from you that you love Hyper-V, you've deployed Hyper-V, but you've already got existing investments in ESX or in Zen Server. And so System Center supports those other two hypervisors. And so cross-platform from the metal up is a key element in our strategy for virtualization and private cloud. We talked a lot about the fact that everyone needs to chart their own course to cloud and the commonalities that we see on the bottom around identity, management, virtualization, and the development frameworks, whether it be across the private cloud or the public cloud. The other thing that we're working on and making sure that you can take your existing investments in applications and run those in the public cloud. And so with respect to application mobility, we provide the Windows Azure Virtual Machine role, or VM role, that allows you to take a Hyper-V-based virtual machine and run it on Windows Azure. We also have a technology called Server Application Virtualization that's part of System Center 2012 that allows you to separate the application from its state and run that application in an Azure worker role and scale out that application on an Azure deployment, but separate out the state so that it can be managed separately, and it can help those applications that weren't actually written to be native Windows Azure applications to run better on Windows Azure. And so all of these investments that we're making across the private and public cloud are to help you so that it's easier to move toward across a private and a public cloud. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the programs that we've put in place that are available to you so that you can deploy virtualization and private cloud. We call these programs Hyper-V Cloud. And what we hear from you are that there is no one-size-fits-all. And so some of you will build your own private clouds using partners or using your own internal expertise. Some of you would like to have pre-configured blocks of compute, network, and storage that have been pre-validated so that it accelerates your time to deployment of private cloud. And some of you would like to use hosted services, whether that be in a hosted private cloud environment where a hoster carves out part of their data center for you. And so we're very happy to be able to offer programs across each of those. So for custom deployments, we've taken the hundreds of deployments we've done with Microsoft services and with our partners and packaged up best practices into deployment guides so that you can learn from all of those previous deployments and deploy your own private cloud in your own environment. We offer pre-configured programs, and we call this Hyper-V Cloud Fast Track. What we do is we work with our partners to deliver pre-validated, pre-configured systems such that take in all of that knowledge from our previous deployments, and you're able to acquire those from our partners and deploy them very quickly. We also have programs for our service providers, and we're happy to have over 100 hosters and service providers that are part of our Hyper-V Cloud Service Provider program that take Windows Server, System Center, and some toolkit and IP that we have to build cloud environments so that you can run your applications in their data center. So Fast Track, as I mentioned, is at the center of it, it's a private cloud reference architecture. So we look at the hundreds of deployments that we've had with our services engagements, as well as partnering with our hardware networking and storage partners to take all of those learnings and best practices in taking Windows Server, Hyper-V, and System Center and deploying those with a pre-configured set of servers, network, and storage gear to help you speed deployment, to reduce the risk because you're taking all of that knowledge into and taking a pre-configured, pre-validated set of hardware and software into your environment. And it provides you flexibility and choice. The Hyper-V Fast Tracks come in a range of sizes from a range of vendors. So we've got Fast Track configurations all the way down to 2-node, up to 16-node. And we have a range of partners here, Dell, Hitachi, Fujitsu, IBM, HP, NEC. HP has their HP Cloud Foundation for Hyper-V Fast Track downstairs in the server aquarium in the exhibition hall, running all of the hands-on labs that you'll use. So that's a 16-blade configuration of two processor nodes, 30 terabytes of storage, and it's going to run upwards of 1,100 virtual machines at any given time when all of you are doing the hands-on labs. And you can go take a look at that down in the exhibition hall as one example of a pre-configured, pre-validated hardware and software solution that we're delivering with our partners. And so today, we're very, very excited to be able to announce the newest addition to the Hyper-V Cloud Fast Track program with NetApp and Cisco. And so we're announcing the NetApp Hyper-V Cloud Fast Track with Cisco that these partners have been working on with us to make sure that they can bring all of their expertise and their unique differentiated value with Windows Server and System Center to help you deploy your private cloud in your data center. And so with that, I'll bring Alex up from NetApp, and he's going to go through the solution.
Thank you. So I'm Alex Josh. I'm the architect for NetApp's private cloud solution, and we were working on this for about 6 months now. So we're incredibly excited to be here today. This is the culmination of a lot of work on our side. We've been working very closely with Microsoft and Cisco to bring this thing to fruition. On the Cisco side, we're using their UCS platform, which actually is a pretty unique platform for virtualization. If you haven't used it yet, it allows us to do things around rapid provisioning and customization and deploying and management that are very difficult to do on other platforms. So they've been a great partner for us as well. In fact, they're here this week with us. From our perspective, as the storage provider, what we're really concerned about is providing a platform that's extremely performant, easy to manage, cost-effective, and makes, probably most importantly in a private cloud environment, is easy to automate. It turns out that automation, or more properly, orchestration, is the secret sauce for these kinds of solutions. Really, virtualization is the foundation, and that's probably something you're all familiar with if you're deploying Hyper-V. But as you start going into private clouds, now it's all about automating that solution and creating things like self-service portals, which require rich orchestration on the back end to support. And that may be newer to you as an organization. You may not have experience deploying those kinds of things. So what I was going to show today is an automated orchestrated rapid provisioning scenario. This is part of our submission, working with the Fast Track program. And we have it running on our booth, so if you want to see it, we have it there. What we're doing is we are rapid provisioning Hyper-V VMs into CSVs using the technology that we call sub-LUN cloning. So basically what happens is on the storage side, we are cloning a single file, a VHD, and then replicating that into a CSV that's already running and mounted in a Hyper-V cluster. This is something that none of our competitors can do, so we're pretty proud of this feature. We're very tightly integrated with System Center Service Manager and also SCVMM. So SCVMM is doing all the heavy work, creating the VM and all those kinds of things. What we're doing is we're managing the storage part. This is based on a product that we call On-Command plugin for Microsoft Environments 3.0 that's going to be going into beta in a couple of weeks, and it'll be shipping this summer. You can also do everything that I'm about to show you in PowerShell. So if you're more of a PowerShell kind of person, we love PowerShell. We have a native PowerShell toolkit. I'm actually going to show you this running in Opala Server, which is Microsoft's orchestration platform. We're going to go into a lot more detail in this scenario in Virtualization 327 with Brian tomorrow, 10:15, right, Brian? Yes, I'm getting a nod in B211, just checking. And if you go to our site here, netapp.com/Microsoft Cloud, we have a white paper describing the solution. We have detailed implementation guides, basically reams and reams and reams of detail how this actually works, which we don't have time to get into in this session. All right, let's see if we can show the demo. Okay, so here we have Opalis Integration Server, and we've created a simple workflow that allows you to provision a VM. For those of you not familiar with Opalis Server, Opalis is based on these objects, these OIPs, Opalis Integration Packs, and then you assemble workflows out of these objects. In this particular case, the first one is actually an integration object that allows you to integrate with System Center Service Manager. So System Center Service Manager is Microsoft's trouble ticketing system, right? It's a help desk tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to request the provision process from Service Manager. And the reason why we're doing this is because fundamentally, if you think about VM provisioning, that is a change request, right? That's change management. And it should be under change control. So you want that to be integrated tightly with your ticketing system. This used to be fairly hard to do, but now it's actually a lot easier with Opalis. So we have a little custom form here that you fill out and allows you to request the VM, what kind of VM you want, how many do you want, things like that. This is just a sample, right? You can make this more fancy if you want, more complicated. Once Opalis gets this request, the first thing we do is we go off and we clone the VM. And what you see here is a running CSV with a gold master, and then job 1 is the new VHD we created. If you notice, it's 133 gigabytes in size. And we're creating this file in about 30 seconds. So think about that a little bit. How long would that take if you copied that file or did traditional provisioning? An hour? Half an hour? A lot longer. The other thing is because we're cloning, it's inherently space efficient. We're simply reusing the bits that are already on the SAN. We're not making another copy. We're simply cloning against a common set of bits. Because we're doing it that way, we're not taking up any storage in the back end. So I could have provisioned 100 VMs or 1,000 VMs, and I have no impact on the back end storage, which is huge. Then what we do is we initiate a job in System Center Virtual Machine Manager. SCVMM is doing all the things that SCVMM normally does. The only step that we're not doing is deploy file. And if you notice there, step 1.2 was really, really, really fast, right? Because basically it did no work. Everything else that SCVMM normally does is happening here. So now we're over in the cluster, and we're just showing you that the VM is created, but it's not started. And the reason for that is because SCVMM is configuring it. Now, we've compressed this video a little bit, so have some patience with me. It's about a 10-minute process, and we only had about 3.5 minutes to give you the demo, so we've compressed this. But if you want to come down seeing this running, we have it running on our booth downstairs, booth 1001. We can show this to you live. There's no smoke and mirrors. This is all real stuff. And also the other thing, if you note in the actual SCVMM screen here, you'll see that the ticker is running, right? So we started this at about 3:16 p.m. So you'll see this finish up in a bit here. So now we have the actual VM running, and if you do connect, you have a machine that's basically, because it was a sysprep machine, you're going through the normal Windows startup process, right? So basically in 10 minutes, we took a very large fixed-size VHD, which is what you want to do for performance reasons, and we've provisioned it onto a running CSV, and then we use SCVMM to configure it. And you'll see it started at 3:16 and it ended at 3:25. So we'll call that 10 minutes, end to end. That's probably the fastest 100 gig VM provision you'll ever see, I think. And then here's the actual running VM, and as you can see, it's been customized. So for example, the computer name is job1, which is, if you remember at the beginning, that's the name we give it, that's the name of the file. Sorry. So SCVMM brings that all to the fore for us. I think the message here is that if you are considering deploying private cloud style architectures in your environment, probably the first thing that you really want to think about is how are you going to manage your orchestration? How are you going to manage your automation? From our perspective, using Opalis Integration Server is the way that we've chosen to do it, and we've built support to this right into our products. And actually, we are really excited about SCVMM 2012 because it's just more of that same goodness. So that's my content for today. Please come by our session tomorrow, and we'll have a lot more detail on how all this works and kind of details of how our fast track submission is built with Cisco. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. That's great. I'll also mention that you can see them down on the exhibition floor. I think it's fantastic to see how NetApp in their NetApp and Cisco configuration was able to leverage the extensibility of System Center and Opalis and still leverage so much of the unique IP and unique value that NetApp has in their products to make it easier for you. And so, as we talked about before, automation is so core to improving the efficiency in deploying virtualization in private cloud. And so we've built extensibility throughout the System Center product line, and Fast Track now enables us to bring our partners' hardware and all the learning that they have, along with the automation that we have in our products, and deliver that to you in pre-configured, pre-validated architectures, whether you buy those architectures directly from our partners or just use the best practices and put it together yourself. And so being able to offer that full spectrum of offerings for deployment modes of a private cloud deployment is core to our strategy, and is what we're hearing from you. I'd like to talk a little bit about the tremendous momentum that we're seeing around Hyper-V. We released the first version of Hyper-V with Windows Server 2008, and another substantial revision with Windows Server 2008 R2 that brought live migration and a bunch of other capabilities. And we're seeing tremendous adoption across all customer sizes of Hyper-V. There's a few up on this slide, some pretty well-known names. And these are all customers that are using Hyper-V in their data centers, in their departmental data centers, in their branch offices, in very big ways. You'll see a broad swath of industries, small and mid-market customers, large enterprises, education, financial services, and then a growing number of service providers such as FastHosts, Telefonica, and Terramark that are using Hyper-V in their data centers to help provide cloud services, whether it be public or private, to their customers. And so CHM2 Hill is a 25,000 person organization, and they've deployed hundreds of servers with Hyper-V running on it to consolidate their data center infrastructure, but also into their branch offices where so much of the cost is deployed. And so we're very happy with the adoption that we're seeing, and we continue to learn from you as you tell us about the deployments and you run into areas where you'd like to help us improve. Target in particular is a company that I'd like to put a spotlight on. Target has taken Hyper-V and is deploying it very rapidly across their organization. We've got a short video here that we'll show you, and so I'm going to go ahead and roll that now.
Target differentiates itself based on high-quality guest shopping experience inside of our stores. That depends on having product on the shelves and a speed checkout. The business applications that enable those processes for our guests run on Microsoft Azure.
With over 1,750 stores and no IT personnel in our stores whatsoever, it's really important to be able to manage these environments remotely. Microsoft let us do that by letting us start with what we call SuperStack. It starts with the hypervisor layer, includes the operating system, all of the management tools that layer on top of that. So Microsoft, for us in our stores, has provided Target with a very comprehensive solution, not just to run, but to manage those environments.
Like most retailers, we run a distributed compute model, meaning that we have servers basically located in all our stores, and those servers are absolutely critical to running our point-of-sale applications, our security applications, our replenishment applications, and our pharmacy applications. If those servers are not up and running, those applications are degraded, and the guest experience in the store is very bad.
One of the mission-critical applications that we virtualize in our stores is Microsoft SQL Server. We currently run 2008 SP1 in all of our stores, and it's imperative being able to operate the store. It helps our team members receive merchandise from the trailers, put it on the shelves, and stock it in the back room.
Target's virtualization think about our requirements as a retailer, it's really important for us to have total confidence that we can process transactions during the fourth quarter during our holiday season when transaction volumes go way, way up. And we found that Microsoft Hyper-V met all of our requirements and had no problem keeping up with the transaction volumes that we
Microsoft and Dell and Target developed a model that we would use over the next 5 years to determine what our growth was like. We leveraged the Dell R710 in the store because it provided us a hardware platform. We used Hyper-V because it provides software and a virtualization platform for the
we're able to collapse down from 7 business servers that run those mission-critical store applications down into 2 physical machines running Microsoft Hyper-V, reduces our operating expense by millions of dollars a year through power savings, break fix, maintenance savings, and avoided capital repair.
So what you saw there was Target using Hyper-V extensively to reduce their operational costs. There's a couple things to take out. One is the number of virtual machines, 15,000 virtual machines on over 3,500 hosts. The other was that one of those applications is running Linux, is required Linux. And so our SUSE support of Linux enabled them to be able to deliver that critical application that they run their business on top of Hyper-V. And Target will continue to roll out Hyper-V. This was a branch office, a store rollout. They're rolling that into their data center as well. And so we're very happy to have customers like Target that continue to push us on deploying Hyper-V on mission-critical applications. So as we talk about business-critical applications and the applications that you all run your businesses on, one of the things that we hear from you time and time again is that you're running your business on applications from Microsoft like SharePoint, SQL Server, and Exchange. But there's been hesitancy saying, are you ready, Microsoft? Is Hyper-V ready to run these mission-critical applications at an enterprise scale? And so ESG, the Enterprise Strategy Group, a third-party analyst firm, did some testing. And we took these 3 critical workloads, these 3 critical applications that we developed to really stress Hyper-V just to see what we could get on top of Hyper-V on a single box. And the results are here with SharePoint. We were able to squeeze out 460,000 concurrent users onto a single virtualized box. With SQL Server, 80,000 customers in an OLTP SQL Server database at about 4,000 or 4,500 transactions per second. And on Exchange, supported up to 20,000 Exchange 2010 mailboxes. And so also today, the Exchange team is publishing expanded support language and rules for supporting and virtualizing Exchange on a Hyper-V environment, such that you can virtualize the messaging role. And for your high availability environments, providing best practices and a white paper around best practices of deploying Exchange on Hyper-V. And so one of the things that I believe you expect of us, and we continue to strive to deliver, is that we make that our own applications run best on Hyper-V, and that Hyper-V will be the best platform for running those applications. And so we thank the Exchange team for all the work that they did here, and for you for helping provide us the feedback we needed to make sure we're doing the right things here. So I'm going to change gears now and talk more about the device side of the conversation. The other part of the conversation that we started today on was the consumerization of IT and how the blurring of the lines between our personal lives and how we interact with devices in our personal lives is blurring with that of our professional lives. And so we use the same devices at home that we do at work. We use far more devices than we ever have before. And yet today, you're being asked to support all of these devices in your environment in an environment where there's growing concerns around data protection, data sovereignty, and security. And so one of the challenges that we hear from you is what can Microsoft do to help you support these trends in helping users be able to work from anywhere without compromising the security and while centrally managing costs and keeping costs down. And so we've taken that into develop our desktop virtualization strategy such that as users and your employees strive to be able to work from anywhere. You have more teleworking, you have people working from the road, you've got more devices, more types of devices. As you may have seen this morning, there's more smartphones shipped this year than PCs. Laptops passed traditional PCs a few years ago, and those trends aren't going to change. And so in an environment where you're being asked to do more and more and more, yet more types of devices are coming in, and there's more data is showing up on the web in places where you don't want it. How do you balance these needs? And so we put together a product portfolio and a desktop virtualization strategy that is not focused just on one type of virtualization, but provides a broad spectrum of offerings such that depending on the type of device and the type of application, you would be able to deliver the right experience at the right time for those users. Just like it did in server virtualization, desktop virtualization has enabled the isolation and separation of the various components of the stack. So there's a number of technologies that you can employ to do operating system virtualization. Microsoft provides enterprise desktop virtualization, which allows client-side virtualization of applications and the Windows operating system itself. We've got Windows Remote Desktop Services that provides session-based as well as VDI-based virtualization, so you can run session-based as well as a full Windows 7 desktop in a virtual machine and deliver that to your users in a central manner. On the application side, you can sequence and stream applications to desktops and end users using Microsoft Application Virtualization, or you can centrally host those applications using Remote Desktop Services with Remote App, such that users only get the application that they need. And we're also able to separate the user data and settings such that if a user loses their laptop or their desktop or their device, you can reprovision that data and those settings to them very easily, and so that you minimize the downtime of that individual. And so this comprehensive set of offerings across desktop virtualization provides you a broad spectrum of tools that you can use to determine what the right application delivery mechanism is for each device and for each type of user. And System Center helps you to centrally manage that entire infrastructure. And then we have a number of partners, such as Citrix, that helps extend our offering beyond what Microsoft does in the box for more scenarios. With Windows Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1, we delivered two virtualization enhancements that have particular value in VDI deployments. The first is dynamic memory, and dynamic memory allows the system to pool and dynamically allocate memory per virtual machine to help aggregate the demand and smooth out the experience. And ultimately, that results in a better user experience, but also much higher densities and cost per user in a VDI deployment. We were able to see 40% improvement with dynamic memory over what we saw with Windows Server 2008 R2 before SP1. And Remote FX. Remote FX changes the game with respect to delivering the full fidelity Windows experience to more types of devices, whether it be a rich PC, a thin client, even some of the thinnest thin clients called zero clients, and deliver the right Windows experience to those devices with a hosted VDI deployment. And so with that, what I'm going to do is invite Michael Cleef up, who's a product manager to help demonstrate some of these capabilities.
Am I on? Yes, I'm on. Fantastic. Okay, so like Mike said, I get the honor of doing a good demo on dynamic memory and remote effects. And like Mike also mentioned, you know, these Zero clients, we've actually got a whole pavilion that's down in the expo area for remote effects. And it actually has some of these like thin clients like I've got in my hand, which like run with as low as 3 watts of power and will retail at a significantly lower price than what traditional thin clients have typically retailed for. So it's definitely worth looking at. So just to give you a bit of a recap, you know, many of you already know, what our remote desktop services platform looks like. But what you may not know is we can actually deliver you an integrated VDI and sessions experience to deliver applications as well as full desktops. You know, there's all this fuss about VDI, but many of you don't realize that we actually solved a lot of the challenges in session virtualization that previously plagued you, like in Windows 2003 and Windows 2000, where there was an inconsistent user experience, you had app-to-app conflicts, printing was a problem. All of those things have now been solved in Server 2008 R2. So for example, as I go and switch to this desktop, which one is this? Is this Windows 7? Is it Server 2008 R2 session virtualization? Which one? And if you can't really answer that question yourself, oh, have I not been on the screen the whole time? Oh, okay. Thank you for that, Mike. That's really, really handy.
That's my value for the day.
I'm sorry, I'm surprised no one actually said, hey, dude, come on. So this desktop is a rich desktop. I've got AeroGlass. I'm running full IE experience. I can go and launch applications like, say, PowerPoint 2003. And this one's launching out of AppV. And in fact, on this particular session host box, I've got Office 2010 and Office 2003 running side by side together on the same host. Now these apps are being streamed out of AppV straight into the session host, and the same app that I've sequenced for session host, I can also run on my Windows 7 box. So the user experience here is really, really good. Now, of course, as I minimize down and go and switch over to my Windows 7 experience, you see a similar experience. I've got full, rich desktop with full AeroGlass. But the point we're making here is with the Windows 7 desktop experience, we can now accelerate it using the power of remote effects. Now, of course, in both of these instances, I've got dynamic memory running with the server as well as with the client, which I'll show you in just a second. But the great bit here is, I've never been able to actually do stuff like, say, running Flash video. And any of you here from New Mexico?
Some questionable plays.
Any New Mexico people?
Game.
Here he is.
You're Payne and Lambert fighting for
this is his soccer team.
Punch in the back. Lambert here fighting through Shumway.
Nice soccer team.
There's physical.
Oh.
As you see, and then
you wait, it gets better from here.
Downright unsporty, and right about here where Lambert grabs Shumway and truly fouled him. Where's the line on this kind of rough play, please?
That's a good soccer team you got there, Mike.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's good.
We do what we have to.
I think that might have been a career-limiting decision to bag my director's soccer team. But, the good thing here is that was a Flash video that we've never been able to execute. And the good thing is Remote Effects was actually doing all that work on the back end of the server using the power of the GPU. So as I switch back to the main console and go to my Hyper-V Manager, it's all running self-contained on this little laptop I've actually got here on the stage here. You can see it's not just, like dynamic memory is not just for servers, for clients, it's also for servers as well. So you can see this particular VM running here. You can see it's running with, I've actually started this off with a gig of memory because Remote Effects does actually require more guest memory. But you can see dynamic memory kicking in and telling us that the memory pressure is actually okay for the VM. As I go and start this one up, this is one of my other Windows 7 VMs that's not running Remote Effects. Now I've set a start on this at 512 meg of memory, and as it starts, it's going to work out what is actually in the guest VM, determine, okay, is that memory pressure okay for what you've got it set for? If not, add some more. And then as I stop using applications, I will take it back again. So it does actually remove memory back out of the VM, contrary to what VMware will tell you. So this particular VM running 512 meg of memory, in a second it's going to pop on the screen. You see there, we're completely in communication with the guest at any time. So we're hot adding, hot removing as required. So great for servers, great for desktop clients, and like Mike mentioned, we got 40% higher VDI density by running in this kind of a configuration. In fact, in the session I've got directly after this, it's in B103, it's called Why Hyper-V for VDI. I'm going to go into very specific details about that test pass that we actually did and how we got that higher density running on a few different types of hardware platforms. And with that, I am done. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So I've got to tell you, other than being from New Mexico, so thanks for that, I started at Microsoft, as I mentioned, 9 or 10 years ago, as the product manager for terminal services. And so at that point, there was no way that streaming video ever would have looked like that, nor did we think it could look like that. And so, again, with RemoteFX delivering that full fidelity, rich experience to a broader range of devices over a broader range of network types really does unlock some of the capabilities. And the other thing that I think is particularly important that Michael showcased there is that you can leverage multiple technologies across the spectrum, whether it's AppV for application virtualization, session virtualization, full desktop VDI, and as well as locally hosted client virtualization with enterprise desktop virtualization. So I think that full spectrum, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And so making sure that we've got the tools to help you deliver the right experiences for your users is really what we're trying to do here. And we couldn't do any of this without our partner ecosystem. And so we've showed a lot of the partner work that we've done today, whether it be with Fast Track, delivering results with our compute, network, and storage partners, whether it's partners plugging directly into and extending Hyper-V to do for management scenarios, or whether it's the extensibility of System Center. We have a tremendous ecosystem around each of the layers in this private cloud stack. And so with partners such as HP, Dell, NetApp, Citrix, EMC, and Hitachi, we're able to do a number of things. And what you've told us is that we need to continue to work with the ecosystem of partners. And so if you go down to the expo, the exhibition hall, you'll see all of the range of partner solutions that are available today. And we continue to engage this ecosystem, make sure we've got the right solutions for you moving forward. And so just to wrap up here, what we tried to do is just give you a very brief introduction to the trends in the market, as well as what we're able to do to help you along your path to desktop virtualization and data center virtualization. I want to invite you to connect with one another and learn from one another and connect with us. If you've got feedback for us, it's very important that we hear it on the products. There's a number of sessions in the virtualization track and others. We talked about SharePoint, Exchange, and SQL Server. There's dedicated sessions to best practices for how to virtualize those applications. And so we just were barely able to scratch the surface here. So I really invite you to go deep and learn, engage with your colleagues, engage with us. And I want to thank you for your time.